Hi, welcome to another video. It's Cara from Bianca Reads, and today we're doing my May wrap up. So it is kind of early in the morning, so hopefully the sun doesn't come in. Also, my camera battery is not full, so we're gonna try and do this relatively speedy, but we all know a wrap up of mine is never short. I have 25 things to talk about today. How many DNFs did I have? Was it just the one? 2 DNFs. A lot of 5 stars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of the 25 books were 5 stars, 2 were DNFs. And I don't think I had anything lower than a 3 other than a DNF. So it was a pretty decent reading month. I was pretty happy with what I read. I was participating in Book Readathon and in Breath of the Wild Readathon was for a week. I didn't get absolutely every prompt covered for Book Readathon. I was 1 short and I finished it like yesterday first. Which is a bit of a bummer, but I just ran out of time. It didn't happen. I got through the main prompts for Breath of the Wild, but I didn't get to the structure prompts. So yeah, let's jump in, get started, and let's talk about what I read in May. So I started off the month by reading The Ren Hunt by Mary Watson. This was one of my 2 Bookoverly Deal books because we only got 2 in May. This was the first of them. This is a YA fantabulism, witchy kind of book. We're following Ren, who is from a group of people. What are they called? I can't remember. So there's 2 groups. It's set in Ireland. And there's 2 kind of groups of people. I can't remember the names they have for each of them, but they both are magic users of the Celtic magics, but they use them in different ways. And she belongs to one group who the other ones are trying to like get rid of, and then their group's trying to get rid of the other group, and they're kind of locked in this battle. But she's kind of being used as an undercover spy in the other group. It's set in modern times, so it's mixing these like traditional Celtic magics, like modern world technology, contemporary setting. And I enjoyed that component of it. I did find the character development and plot to be a little confusing. I didn't really understand what was going on till right near the end, which kind of hindered it for me. I am interested in reading book 2, which I already owned, which is The Wicker Light. And I think where this left off at the end was really interesting, but the actual development of this book was a bit slow for me. I kind of struggled. I gave it 3 stars. Then after that, I did a reread of Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo because I just watched the show. And I decided I had to reread the book. I literally read it in 1 day, like basically 1 sitting on audiobook, and just like zoomed through it in 1 sitting. I gave it 4 stars. I don't think it's the best book ever. I think it has a lot of pitfalls. And I'd totally forgotten that the original trilogy is written in first person, which is not my fave. But it was fine. I didn't have a strong memory of this book because I originally didn't like it very much. And I remember like really struggling with it. I liked it much more on audiobook this time, especially having just watched the show. I felt more connected to the characters, and I was surprised with how well it stuck to the plot of the book, the TV show. Like, there were things that happened in the TV show that I was like, did that even happen in the book? Yeah, it did. It was not that different. I was actually kind of impressed. Like, other than some key things that I think the TV show did weird, the actual like Alina's plot was pretty true, and I was surprised at that. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than the first time I read it. I gave it 4 stars. I will be continuing rereading the Grishaverse. 6 of Crows is currently like the plan for June on audiobook. I forgot to mention that in my TBR, but I will be going between, because I'm more interested now in reading 6 of Crows having just watched the show than I am in reading Siege and Storm, but we'll come back to Siege and Storm. So it's 4 stars for Shadow and Bone, which I think is a higher rating than I originally gave it, but I think it might have been a 3.5 last time. Then I read Kingdom of Souls by Rena Barron. This is the first book in a fantasy series. I think it's a trilogy. Book 2 is out. I purchased it. It's in my haul if you want to go watch my haul. This is about, it's a West African inspired, I think so. It's an African inspired fantasy about a girl whose mother is kind of doing some shady stuff and is like a real bitch to her, and she just really wants to make her family proud. They all have this witch doctor magic, which she doesn't have, but you can sell years of your life to get magic. And so that's considered not good and dirty and like not appropriate, but she's never been able to have magic. It's never been gifted to her. It's meant to like come to you in your teenage years, and she's getting older and it still hasn't happened, and she feels a bit desperate. So she goes and gives up parts of her life for this magic. And really that's the part that's in the premise, like in the synopsis. Is about her ambition, and I think that kind of misled me, because really she's not so aggressively ambitious. She's doing things for the greater good. Like, she kind of believes in like solving the problems. It's not just her really wanting magic for herself. She thinks if she has magic she can solve this problem, and it's much more about the problem, but I don't want to spoil it. But I do think, I thought this was much more like an ambitious, power hungry kind of main character, and she's not. So that kind of put me off on the wrong foot, but ultimately taking it for what it is, I really enjoyed it, and I really liked how it ended up. So I ended up giving this a 4 stars. I think it's like a 3.5 rounded up, but I was really invested by the end, and I'm going to read book 2. But yeah, I think the synopsis did me dirty on this one, because my expectations were not what was delivered. But that doesn't mean what was delivered was bad. Then I read The Beast. The Beast, that is XX by Ryan Hughes. This is a mixed media book. It's a bit hard to see. There we go. You can kind of see there. There's a lot of text, but also a lot of other stuff. I don't even know how to describe this. This is a sci-fi. It's a technological first contact with aliens. It starts off with this signal that's transmitted and gets picked up by a like private NASA. They don't know how to decode it, but they've got this signal that they found out in space and they don't know what it is. And then we jump across to a group of characters who are trying to, he's autistic. The main character, Jack, is autistic and is seeing patterns in things that are freaking him out, and everyone's just like, you've just got a strong pattern recognition. That's what you're known for. That's what his whole career is built on, having a really high pattern recognition. And they're like, you're just recognizing patterns that aren't there, you're just seeing things. And he's like, no, I think this is legit. And he thinks, he has this idea of consciousness that anything with thoughts, you need to have all input and output, so sensory stuff, and something to house that in. Like, to have a sense of self and to be a conscious thing, you have to have a me. And he says, other than having a body, the internet has inputs in and out. So could you theoretically construct a body for the internet, and it would then develop a person, like become a conscious being? And so he's building a like machine, but really it's just code to trap a part of the internet in a little bubble so it will have consciousness. And in doing so, he becomes linked with, like, he's also hired by the other people for his pattern recognition on this signal that they don't know how to interpret. So he's kind of doing both things, and they all end up tying together. And obviously this is like 1,000 pages, so a whole lot happens, like a lot. And I was obsessed. Like, I don't know how else to put it. I know people struggle with this. I was buddy reading this with KJ, and I think she ended up DNFing it. It's tough. There's a lot going on, but and so it's sometimes very difficult to read. It's also, I would call it pretty Like, it's not space opera-y, but it's pretty hard sci-fi. It is very much like hard sci-fi. So if you don't like, to me this was like the adult alien. Oh, I mean, even they're kind of aliens, aren't they? It's like an absolutely remarkable thing if it was mixed media and on steroids. Like, it's got that intersection of technology, the internet, what that does to people, but also like outsider influence and things going strangely. It's got actual aliens, which I can't remember if an absolutely remarkable thing has, but it's got that similar vibe. It's very technological, and I think some people might get like overwhelmed by the amount of stuff being thrown at you, and often it doesn't make immediate sense. A lot of it's metaphorical, but I loved it. I thought everything was necessary. I thought it all added to the story. There was never a bit where I was like, why is this here? Like, none of the mixed media was unnecessary. It was all serving a purpose. There was only one bit that until we got to the end of it and saw how it tied in, I was like, what's happening here? And that bit really drudged, and I struggled to get through it. But once I figured out how it connected, my lord, it was genius. I gave this 5 blazing stars. It was so good, but I totally understand why people would struggle with it, and I don't recommend it widely. It's one of those things that I think if you're really into hard sci-fi, technological sci-fi, and you're interested in a deep dive, this was so engaging and so intriguing. I was reading 100 pages a day and I kept wanting to read more than that, but I was like pacing myself. I probably could have read this in like 3 days if I was just reading this. It was so good. It's like 1,000 pages. 1,000 pages. Then I read Winterbourne Home for Mayhem and Mystery by Ali Carter. This is a middle grade. It's a sequel to Winterbourne Home for Vengeance and Valor. And it's about this girl, April, who's an orphan, and her, in the first one, she goes to live with, in this estate house, millionaire estate house, and with some other orphan kids, and goes on adventures. And this is a follow-up to that. This like really feels like Ali Carter writes great stuff. The only series of hers I haven't enjoyed was her more recent young adult series, which was about, what are they called, diplomats. I'm just less interested in that as a topic, but her Gallagher Girls series and the High Society series are genius, and this also great. I am scared because she only got contracted for the first 2 books, but this leaves off with a lot of cliffhangers, so I really hope she gets contracted for more because I loved this. I would love to see more of them. I gave this one also 5 stars. Then I read The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan Hay. This is another sci-fi dystopian following 2 sisters in this world where the humans' impact on the planet has meant that everyone kind of lives either in these towers where you're meant to spend a lot of your time in technological space to avoid a physical footprint on the world. You're meant to minimize how much physical footprint you take up, or you live in these like disaster zones where natural disasters are like ruining the world. So people are trying to get into these towers to survive, but there's limited space, things like that. And then the other sister is on an island. She just washed up and she doesn't have a good memory of who she is. And yeah, it's nuts. It's honestly nuts. I don't want to spoil anything by giving away by saying anything more than that. You really should read it. It's amazing. It's a beautiful dystopian. I was destroyed. I was distraught. It goes so many places and it just does so much, and I loved it to pieces. The writing was beautiful, the characters were complex and interesting, and I loved it. 5 stars. Then I listened to Fortuna Sworn by KJ Sutton. I listened to the audiobook for this. This is a fantasy romance following Fortuna, who is a nightmare, which means she can see other people's worst fears and imprint stuff on them, I think. I didn't love this. I didn't hate it. I just didn't buy the romance. Like, I wasn't invested. And I never really felt like fantasy romance was really my kind of romance. And this kind of solidified that for me. It was just meh. The plot was average. I didn't hate it, but it wasn't anything spectacular for me, and the romance didn't compel me, so I didn't feel like pulled in by the romance. So it was 3 stars. Then we had my first DNF, which was Rage of Dragons by Evan Winters. I'm really sad about this because I wanted to love it, but I didn't even get very far. I got like 60 pages, I think. My problem was this felt like all it was doing was battles. I didn't understand where we were going or what was trying to be achieved. By the time I got like 70 pages in, I was like, I should know by now what the purpose is for a fantasy. Like, we shouldn't just be in the setup. I should understand what we're trying to achieve, and I didn't. It felt like we were just in battle after battle for no clear reason. It wasn't, I think this is just not my kind of fantasy. If you like a war-based fantasy, I think you'll really like this, and I know people love this, but for me, I really struggled to get any further than that. I'm sure maybe it would build up plot more in the middle, but I was really struggling, so I DNF'd this one. I can't really comment on it other than like, I think you will like it if you like war fantasy. Then I I read on my Kindle, which I mean my iPad. I don't have a Kindle, I have an iPad and a Kindle app. Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones. This is a novella about a kid whose dad died, but he thinks he's come back and is like a ghost in the house, and he's trying to find him. This was heartbreaking. It was so good. Like, oh, it was so good. I don't even know how to describe it. Stephen Graham Jones is a Native American author. I think he's Blackfeet. And this really explored like an Indigenous connection to elders and that kind of thing. It was amazing. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. It was traumatic to read. Yes. Then I read Heartstopper Volume 4 by Alice Oseman. This is just a quick graphic novel. I flew through it in like an hour. These are really cute. I feel like there's going to be one more is what I heard. Though this also kind of wrapped up really well. This is about Charlie and Nick from Charlie's sister Tori is the main character in Solitaire by Alice Oseman. And this series is just their romance. It's really sweet. Has a lot of mental health representation. Nick is bi, Charlie is gay and got bullied and has an eating disorder, and it kind of goes into all of that. And yeah, this one probably had the heaviest focus on the eating disorder, so if that's going to be triggering for you, keep that in mind, but it does have trigger warnings at the start. And yeah, I loved this. It was so good. I gave it 5 stars. Then I listened to A Heart in the Body and in the World by Deb Coletti. This is a contemporary about a girl who's running across the United States to try and process some trauma she's been through. It was really compelling, really good. I started listening to this on a walk, coincidentally. I had a good time with it. It was sad and complicated and messy, but I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was really well done. If you like hard-hitting contemporary, I think you will really like this. It was 5 stars. I read it on recommendation from my friend Paige, who really loved it as well. I don't think I was as hard hit by it as her, but I don't have relatable trauma, so that's probably a factor. But yeah, I loved it. It was really good. 5 stars. Then I read A Tangle of Spells by Michelle Harrison. This is the 3rd and final, I believe, Pinch of Magic book. This series follows 3 sisters having magical adventures. This one I liked the least of the 3, and I think that's a common theme. It just felt less scale. The first 2 had a really big scale. This didn't feel that for me. I didn't really, for a long time, the mystery relies a lot on the kind of trope of like, no one knows what's happening and magic is stopping people from knowing what's happening. So it's a lot of misdirection, but that also means you as the reader are misdirected away from like the point of the plot, and it kind of took a while for me to understand what was going on, and I wasn't super invested. Whereas books 1 and 2 really pushed like we're going on an adventure to solve a problem really early, and I liked that format better. for me, but it was still really beautiful and it was a good story and I liked the characters. I continue to like the characters, so it wasn't bad, it was just not as good as book 1 and 2. I gave this one 4 stars. Then we have Fugitive Telemetry by Martha Wells, which is the 6th story in the Murderbot series. I love Murderbot, no surprise, they're amazing. This one is about a murder that happens on the base where they're living by this point, and they're kind of like tasked with solving the problem and dealing with local law enforcement to a degree, and I thought this was great. I loved this, it was so good. I gave it 5 stars. My battery light is flashing at me, we might have to pause and come back, so I still have quite a few things to talk about. After that I listened to The Faithless Hawk by Margaret Owen. This is the sequel to The Merciful Crow. It is just a duology, I believe, and they kind of follow 2 self-contained arcs but following the same characters. Like arc 1 is kind of self-contained and this is the 2nd arc. I didn't love it. There are things that really bothered me about the first one in the writing style and they carried through in the 2nd one, so I'm glad I listened to it on audiobook because they didn't bug me as much on audiobook. But I did kind of struggle with conveniences and things like that in this. It was good, I didn't love it. I gave it 3 stars. Then I read Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. This is a contemporary, I'd say literary fiction-esque book. It's queer. We follow Grace, who has just finished her PhD and she has like a whirlwind weekend in Vegas and she ends up getting married to this girl, Yuki. And her life is kind of falling apart around her because she doesn't know what to do next. She's mixed race black and people aren't employing her with her PhD because she doesn't fit the like environment, like the culture of the workplaces. So she's dealing with a lot of racism and doesn't know what to do next. And she'd had all these dreams clearly laid out for her and where she wanted to go, and she's really struggling to figure out what to do that. And so she ends up running away to where Yuki is and having like a whirlwind summer. It's way darker than I expected, but I really loved it. I loved every minute. It was so good. I gave it 5 stars. Then I listened to Bunny by Mona Awad. What a mindfuck. What a mindfuck. I don't know what I was reading. Felt like I was on an acid trip. I still don't understand what I was reading. It was nuts. Every moment was like engaging, but I was so confused. I had no idea what was going on. I ended up giving it a 3 stars. I still don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. It's a dark academia, witchy, weird, paranormal thriller. I don't even know. It was so bizarre. I was so confused. Then I read Blazewrath Games by Amparo Ortiz. This is a YA sports kind of fantasy. It's this sporting game with dragons, but this is a much higher scale than the game itself. Like this is like a solved world kind of thing. This has strong like Harry Potter vibes, but I think that's because it's kind of got a big bad. My main problem with this was that there were some conveniences and the villain seems a little bit mustache twirly, but it was super fun. And I loved the characters. The writing style is like, I'd say a little bit cheesy, but in a good way. And I ended up giving this 4 stars. It was a 3.5 rounded. As predicted, my battery went flat, so lighting's probably a little different, but let's get going. I was saying I gave this 3.5 stars rounded up as well, so I can't remember exactly when it cut off. The next thing I read was Windwormwood by Shay Earnshaw. This is a fantabulism kind of story. We follow our main character, what is her name? Nora, who is from a family that have always lived on this mountain kind of area. It's really snowy, there's woods. The woods are magic, you're not meant to go in them or you'll die. And then there's a bunch of boys at this like reform school that are there. And it's a whole murder mystery. It's eerie, it's creepy. I liked this much more than her first book. I felt like the atmosphere was much stronger. But there were some things that I felt like some times in the plot where I felt like it was just going in circles to try and get to a point. Like the emotional development was not as strong as it could be, but I overall enjoyed the vibes of this. I thought it was really well done. I had a good time. It was 4 stars. Then we had our other DNF of the month. That was Veno Nostra by Sergei Davinsky and Marina Davinsky. Davinsky? I can't remember. I just finished listening to Bunny when I started this, which was probably my mistake, because this was so confusing. Again, I didn't understand where the plot was going. It's a dark academia, magic. I don't know. I didn't understand. I didn't understand. I didn't know what was going on. And KJ finished this and was like, I have no idea what I just read. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm currently reading. I was like 20% in maybe. And then I was looking at Goodreads reviews, like what is people rating this 5 stars for? Like, why do people love this? And it was all like the nonsensical plot. You just really get the vibes and it's just so good. And you like, I don't think the vibes sold it for me. Maybe if I was reading this physically with my eyes, I would have appreciated the vibes rather than on audiobook, but the audiobook didn't give me vibes. I can appreciate a book that's just vibes, no plot, but this I really struggled with. I really just didn't get it. So I was about 20% when I DNF'd it. I just couldn't bring myself to keep reading at that point. Then I listened to The Twisted Tree by Rachel Burge, which is I thought it was middle grade, but it's like, because it looks like a middle grade cover, but it's actually young adult. But probably on the younger end of young adult, so like a true teen book. This follows a girl whose grandmother lives in Norway, and she decides to go visit after something happens. I can't remember what happens. She'd had an injury and she's blind in one eye and has a lot of scarring, and it was to do with her grandmother, like when she was last visiting her grandmother, and her mum doesn't want to get her to go back, but she decides she has to go, and she can hear, since that incident, whenever she touches material, she can hear the like history of the material, what the wearer was feeling, things like that. And so she's trying to, her mother just is ignoring her and not really talking to her, and she decides to go secretly to visit her grandmother to figure out what's going on with this magic. But her grandmother's died. When she gets there, her grandmother's dead. And there's a boy squatting in the house, and it's them trying to like figure out her magic, what happened. I really enjoyed this. This was really cool. I do think its pacing was a bit strange. Like not a lot happened for a long period of time and a lot happened in a really short period of time, but it was really good regardless. I gave it 4 stars. And then I listened to another little audiobook called The Unmatchable Bachelor. I can't remember who wrote this, but it will be Kelly Papyrus. It'll be here. This is a Desi diaspora romance. We follow our main character. I can't remember her name because this is a really short audiobook and I zoomed through it. She is a divorcee and she runs a matchmaking business. And she's trying to matchmake for this family whose oldest son has run from the altar like 5 times. So no girls want to be arranged with him anymore. But it turns out he has a secret, and that secret is he's gay. So she's trying to solve that. And is falling for his younger brother. So it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't good. It was just fun and kind of cheesy but sweet. I ended up giving it 3 stars. It was very short. Then I read Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. This took me a while, but I was co-reading it with a different book. So I feel like it felt like it dragged more than it actually dragged, just because I didn't have time to read it. This is about Bree, whose mother's recently died in a car accident after they'd had a fight, and she's dealing with a lot of grief and trauma. But she also goes to this like early college program and kind of gets caught up with Arthurian secret society. I do think this had some conveniences, which I loved the book. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved it. I loved all the characters. I loved the world and the plot, and especially the ending. And I gave it 5 stars. But I do think, like, she's in this early college program. I feel like this would have worked better as an actual new adult book and not been aged down. Because if she was just college age, I feel like it would have made so much more sense. But instead there was this like early college program to explain why she was 16. And it didn't make sense to me. Like, I think she should have just been 19, 18, 19, and I think it would have worked much smoother and made more sense and felt like I was having to make less leaps of faith, if that makes sense. So I think like this should have just stayed as a new adult book, but what do I know? I loved this. I thought it was really, really good. I liked the writing style a lot. Bree's her grief makes her very straight to the point and blunt, but I loved it. And there's so many characters, it is a bit confusing, especially at the start, but it does all settle in and make sense, and by the end I was like, yes, every time anything happened. So I gave it 5 stars, and I can't wait for book 2. Then I read a little tiny audiobook, This World is Full of Monsters by Jeff Vandermeer. I have no idea what happened in this. It was weird. Jeff Vandermeer is weird. I've listened to a different audiobook of his and was very confused during that. I gave this 3 stars. It was good. I liked the vibes. I just had no idea what was going on. It's kind of follows a guy who something happens and he ends up with like a thought parasite. But then I just listened to it while making dinner one day. It was fun. And then I read Warbreaker, which was what I was co-reading with Legendborn, and hence why Legendborn took longer than it should have. This is a standalone Cosmere book from Brandon Sanderson. And the magic system in this is about colours and breath. So you hold breath and it has, you can like instill breath in things, and that uses colour to power magic. It's weird. I liked it. I really enjoyed this. The characters were really interesting. I do think this is a kind of slower paced plot, but the end was super fascinating. I really, really enjoyed it. And I gave it 4 stars. And finally, I read The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This was so cool. It follows Avery, who is poor. She lives with her sister. She's an orphan. No, they're not orphans. They have a dad, but a deadbeat dad. So her and her half sister that share their deadbeat dad live together. Her sister has an abusive partner that's in and out of the picture. She doesn't get along with the partner, so she's, the main character, is heading off to live in her car when she gets a call. Apparently they've been receiving letters that they thought were fake, but she gets called up to the like principal's office, and this rich guy's there, and he said, we've been trying to contact you because you're listed on our grandparents' will and you have to be there for us to read the will. And it's this multi-billionaire's will, and she's listed, and she gets there and she has inherited the entire estate, and the rest of the family get like pittance. Like the actual family, and she has no idea why she was chosen to inherit this estate. She has no clue, but there's lots of puzzles involved, and the stipulation is that she has to live there for a whole year, otherwise the whole thing goes to charity. So nobody's getting anything except for her. But she has no idea what's going on. The grandfather was really into puzzles and mysteries, and there's a lot of puzzles and mysteries. There's 4 brothers that are the grandkids that were expected to get the inheritance, and they're all half brothers, and they don't really know their dads, and she's kind of got like a friendship / relationship with most of them. Her older sister comes along with her. She's got a kind of thing going on with the oldest brother, but then the 2 middle brothers, the main character Avery's kind of got a flirtationship going on with, and then the younger brother she's really good friends with, like becomes close friends with. Like they have less of a romance but more of a like weird friendship. And this was just so good. It was not what I expected. I expected it to be a bit more cutthroat, but instead it's more like the mystery is out to get them rather than like boom 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 shoot 'em up kind of thing. The sequel is coming out this year. I'm really excited about it. This was amazing. I gave it 5 stars. It was just what I wanted. It reminded me a lot of High Society and Gallagher Girls, a la Ali Carter. had similar vibes. I really liked it. It was really good. So those are the 25 things that I read in May. I'm hoping to read more in June despite there being less days, but obviously I had some big chunkers like XX on this, and I had less time to listen to audiobooks. Hopefully that will kind of go up this month. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you've read any of these and would like to chat about them. Otherwise I'll see you soon with another one. Thanks, bye.